Hey guys, welcome to Be Original with Isley Creative,
where we discuss all things marketing. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy.
Welcome back, everybody. This is OJ with the Be Original podcast.
And I'm Christian.
That really didn't flow the right way. Anyways, it doesn't matter. Today, or this season, we've been talking about creating content for every part of the buyer's journey, right? Yep. Today, I think, is a really important one. We're going to talk about conversion.
Yes.
Now, we're going to talk about conversion, and a lot of this has to do with Facebook and Instagram because that's kind of the format that is easier for us to explain, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it applies to programmatic video and everything else, but that's, this is really where you get people to take the next step.
Right. So it's now we're talking about actually buying into a service or product that you're selling, right? Yeah. And the content that goes along with it, right? Yeah. So, we just got done a few days ago shooting a big thing for some products that we're going to be running some holiday campaigns for, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea is kind of what we used as our benchmark when creating the content was some really big players in the field that we're in, right? And we knew that right off the bat, our content that we were creating, whether it's still image, graphic design style content, or if it's video, we had to make sure that we were presenting it in a better way than everybody else was, right? Yeah. And that's we took a ton of time with it. They look awesome. Blah, 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 right? Yeah. So what is some of when we're talking about content and conversions, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think the number one thing is that you want to call people to action here. Like, this is the time to say, buy it now. This is the time to say, click to call, make an appointment, all these things. This is where your actionable item comes into play. So obviously you can have those things under the awareness and, in the browsing categories, but this is really where your content is going to drive those decisions. So it's either, like we said, we looked at some big players for these products we're working on, and the big thing is realizing that, okay, this is what they're shooting, this is the kind of stuff they're putting out there, and people are buying. So how can we differentiate? How can we make it a little bit sexier? How can we make it a little bit more appealing or stand out even? Maybe it's just doing it the opposite of what people are doing just to get it to stand out.
Right.
So this is where you bring in product comparisons. This is where you bring in just anything to really get people to see the difference and click to buy. So you're really engaging at this point to say, do this now.
Yeah, and a big part of this too is, and it just doesn't end at the thumb either. Like the thing that we have to be very careful of is something as simple as your website, where you're sending them to purchase a product, right? Like the landing page that they're seeing as soon as they click through an ad, they need to seamlessly feel like they're receiving the same content, like not the same content, but the same quality all the way through, right? Yeah. So you don't want to spend a ton of money or a ton of time creating these awesome content pieces for social, and then you're sending them to a web page that like doesn't work half the time or can't handle traffic or things like that. Like that's important,
right? And when we say content too, that includes the content on a landing page, right? That includes the content on your homepage. All of this is all encompassing. This is where you really want to make sure everything's in line, it's telling the right story, and people are trusting you and understanding you. Like, that's the big thing, because now you're taking that trust and you're saying, since you trust me, I'm going to tell you this is the next step. Buy this and this will solve your problem. This is the solution here.
Right.
And I think that content is where you have to work with somebody or in your internal team or an agency to try to understand. This is where you've drawn them in by a feeling, and you're what I mean, like you're building this message, and you're saying at this point, like, we recommend that you do this, and we're going to ask you to do this. Don't be afraid to ask now for this. You know.
And obviously too, like, just piggybacking off of this, like ease of the checkout process, right? Like you want to make sure that you're actually, don't send them to a web page that tells them more about your company. Don't send them to the Who We Are section of your website,
Right.
the Contact Us page form. Like, don't do that. Like, that's big no-nos. You need to send them. If you're a service-based company, my recommendation would be to either use a form that's already on Facebook that they can submit through, or if you're going to send them somewhere else, you need to make sure that the content that they're seeing is super easy to understand and it's very simple, right?
Yeah, that's where like a booking platform or a
Right.
Call Now
Yep.
or something like that would come into play.
Yeah. And then if you are taking them to a product page, you're taking them to the product page that then gives them in a big button, bold, blah, 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 that says buy now. So it's really easy for them to move into a shopping cart, right? And checking out.
Yep.
It's okay if they can't necessarily click checkout right away from that page. Like for instance, if you're taking them to buy, I'm trying to think of let's just use coffee because that's the only thing I can think of. You just use coffee for an example. Like, it's okay for them to say, okay, click here, buy now, or put it in a cart, right? Add to cart. And then the next screen that pops up is like an additional offer. And you try and hook them. And if it's not something that they want, they can say, no, thank you. And it goes to the cart, but if they like see something like, let's say it's a new, pour over thing, right? Oh, that looks cool. I want to buy that. Blah, blah, blah. It takes them through that process. But it's continuing to give them content and ease of use for the people that are actually viewing the content.
Creating a path where they can't get lost.
Right.
That's the biggest thing there.
Right. Because so many times we see this. People have the right idea, but then it gets lost once you hit their website, and it's like, oh my God, where do I go?
Yeah.
What am I even looking at? And that's hard. That's a hard part. So you got to make sure that all that stuff is in line when you're presenting yourself via social.
Yep.
Call to action. You talked a little bit about that, but I think more so than not, like in this day and age, like you have to be like in front of people, like buy it now.
Yep.
Like, is super important.
Yeah, one
call
click.
now.
Yeah.
Like things like that. Like you have to make that evident to people because people just don't.
Absolutely.
We're moving too fast to have to think about anything else, right?
Yep.
So I think that's key. I think the other part is that we need to, as far as content goes, when we're creating content specifically for the conversion rate, is there any like secret sauce to it?
I think the biggest thing, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, but the biggest thing is that your content at this point needs to absolutely be original. Like you cannot just use a Google image. You cannot just use people smiling and being happy. It has to be about your product or service. It has to show your product or service and give people like a clear picture of what they're getting. And it's basically click this button and you get this.
Yeah. It's the human factor, right? We want to connect with other humans.
Yeah.
Well, good. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but I think it's good. So conversion, absolutely important. Obviously, we're taking you through the sales funnel. This season is kind of really fun for me, being a salesperson. Like we're at that mid funnel, hopefully more towards the end of that funnel where it's, coming out, a client, right? They're buying a product or a service, and then at the end we can talk about keeping them over a period of time. So
I would say this is a good opportunity that if you have any questions about this part of the process for your business specifically, since it is different for each business, put those questions in, and this is part of what we'll answer at the end of the series.
Yeah. So on top of that, like, comment, subscribe, all of those things on whatever platform you're listening or watching this. And we greatly appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to watch us. So we will be back next week and talk to you more about this content stuff. So thanks, guys.
Thanks again for checking out Be Original with Isley Creative.
You're the reason we do this, so be on the lookout for more tips and advice on your marketing strategy.